Well, welcome to Homebrew. I am your humble dungeon master, Joshua Sloan. Joining us today is.
Sarah Sloan. No, wife and player today, so.
Yeah, today we'll be performing our session 0 for our next Duet RPG campaign using the homebrewed version of the Genesis system. If you are interested in learning more about the mechanics of our system, we posted a RPG rollout video discussing everything about how we approach role-playing games on this channel. So please take a look at that. It just saves us a little bit of time on this. We got a lot of stuff that we want to get through too. So before we get started, a Duet campaign is a campaign where there is only one dungeon master and another player. So if you're interested in playing D&D or any of the other RPGs out there, but you only have one friend, or if it's just you and the lady, so to speak, have no fear. It's certainly doable, and we're going to be showing you guys that here in a little bit, and stick around. The second curveball to this particular session 0 is that this campaign that we're running is actually the origin story for one of the characters, Sarah's character, that she'll be running in the next campaign that we have in a party of 3 starting in June. So there's a couple things that kind of make this a little bit awkward for us to have to schedule. In essence, in order to make this video and begin this process, we actually had to clarify a few things with our future group members ahead of time. So we'll be doing a session 0 video for that group as well. And in that, we will recap the pre-session 0, so that way you have it as a reference for running your future campaigns. That should be posted around the start of June. That's kind of the thought about this origin story getting wrapped up and then the start of that campaign. Additionally, here today, we will be just going through a few items for the sake of clarity, to help establish that we needed to establish in order to run this duet. So, for instance, during our pre-session 0 for those guys, we needed to know when they were going to be available to start that campaign. And so we pinned them down for June, which means that now we know how long this campaign is going to last. So moving off of that, other things that we had to discuss with those guys, the geographical setting, right? We definitely wanted their opinion on what they were wanted to do, whether or not they're going to have a campaign in a forest or in a city, those sorts of things. And it really wouldn't make a lot of sense for us not to have that in consideration when we're running this campaign. So we definitely pinned them into that. What we did is we actually sent them a campaign world setting notes, and that's going to be that Genesis 1.1 document that's in the links in the comments below this video. So take a look at that if you're looking to get context on what exactly the world is that we are set in. That is a setting that I created for the sake of being able to stream and not be covering copyright or anything like that. And we actually have other material that we've been using it for as well. Uh, in essence, what you need to know for today is that the Genesis world is a world called Dwelling that we're playing in, and it's essentially a grim, dark, high fantasy world. So it's going to be a little bit more in the mud, so to speak, as far as that goes. But you're still going to have your sword and board heroes, etc. Right? So we pinned that down and moved over to discussing power level. Right? So did everyone want to start off as in what D&D terms would be as like level 20 characters, or did they want to start off as a peasant? Right? Because if this campaign if Sarah's character survives and everything goes well, um, that means that they would need to end at the same level that the next campaign was going to start. And so we wanted to make sure that we flushed that out. It ended up being pretty good. Sarah, you mentioned before how much you were hoping to level up for this campaign, and I think it ran pretty good with this. Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't mind starting off a lower level. I kind of enjoy being there as your character progresses rather than just starting at a bit of a higher point. Whereas we have one character or one player who's a bit more experienced who didn't want to start at baseline 0. He wanted to feel a little bit more powerful, and the other new player was just fine with that as well. So it sounds like I'll be kind of starting at baseline here and working my way up a few levels before I get to everybody else. So,
Yeah, so having discussed that with our other players, it sounded like if you're familiar with the Genesis system or if you've watched our previous videos, we're looking to get about 100, 150 XP uh, throughout the course of this campaign, which is 4 to 6 level ups for Sarah. Which that kind of in the amount of time that we have, being about 8 to 12 sessions, that's still leveling up, getting 25 XP about every 3 sessions. So it's still a pretty good amount, and it gives you a chance to go from you know, being a lowly peasant to someone who may be ready to start puffing their chest out to the world and taking on some issues that are out there. So that's kind of what you can expect from this campaign that I'm going to be running, and that's kind of what the things that you need to know when you're starting to pit your heroes against what's coming, right? So a couple other things that we talked about were character interests, making sure that we didn't have any personality traits that would uh, clash right out the gates. And because Sarah got to pick her character first, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't something that was going to be incompatible with the interests of the other players. So we really did need to have this pre-session zero first. Including with that also is general story interests. As I mentioned before, if someone doesn't want to spend the whole campaign in a town with a who done it and all this other stuff, then we wanted to make sure that you know Sarah's character wasn't uh, stuck in the middle of a city, or maybe their characters from the middle of Timbuktu in the desert, right? No one wants to do a desert campaign, so now she's got to travel across the entire continent in order to be able to get to the setting that everyone else wants. So we hashed some of that stuff out. It sounds like the next campaign we're gonna be running in a woody area, and that seemed to be working out pretty good. So that's about all of the notes for now that you need on the pre-session zero. Like I said, we'll be recapping some of this when we go into the next campaign with those people's session zero with all of us included there. So tune in for that. For now, though, we got a couple of things that we're going to run through for this session zero. So we will get into the meat of this, which would be character creation for Sarah's character. But there's a couple of things that I usually run through as a DM when I'm doing session zeros. Now, a couple of these I don't necessarily need to run with Sarah because we've done campaigns in the past where I was her DM and she was my player. So we kind of already have some of this fleshed out. But for the sake of you guys, there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that you understand that you should probably run into your campaigns or roll into your session zeros just to make sure everyone is on the same page, okay? Because everyone has a different reason why they're playing an RPG. First one is to understand that uh, RPGs, role playing games, is a balance between a pillar of social interaction, exploration, and combat, right? A lot of people come from video games and they kind of expect the game to just be one smash after another smash situation. You barely even get off of the hex board or the grid board that you're using, right? We typically like to run a bit of a balance between all three of these. And it's just important to make sure that everyone is going to get what they want out of the setting because some people aren't comfortable with role playing, right? They kind of really want their character to act like a you hit X right trigger, left trigger, and then they do a backflip and they kill 7 things, and then that's all they really want to do, and that's fine. You just need to make sure that everyone's on the same page on what the nature of the RPG is going to be, right? So role play comfort, not everyone's fun, not everyone's interested in doing voices and stuff like that, right? Or thinking about what would my character feel about this moment. But other people, that's what they live for, right? So that's what they're here. I like to have a little healthy balance between those. And so it's something that I usually cover with the players that I'm going to be playing with. And you'll see more of that when we get into the session zero with those other characters because we'll actually have a player with us that hasn't had me as a DM, and so we'll talk a little bit more about those sorts of things. So after that, the next thing that we talk about is we start creating our characters and figuring that stuff out. But I'm gonna skip real quick over those sorts of things, and we'll come back to them because one thing that I always talk about in session zeros are DM expectations. Okay, uh, like I said, me and Sarah are very familiar with how I run my campaigns and how I run my table. And it's just a couple of rules that I always want to make sure that everyone goes through when they do their session zeros. Because if you leave it unspoken, there could be some animosity that builds up, and I'd like to get all that stuff out of the way right out the gates, right? So, um, one thing is that I don't necessarily think everyone needs to know how the system that you're running works. Um, for instance, uh, if someone doesn't know what they can do, generally speaking, as a DM, I prefer people to ask and get in the mindset of what do they want their character to do and what would their character ask rather than trying to think about like how many actions do they have, right? So if I have a player and I say, hey, you're in a tavern and there's a bartender and there's people fighting in the back corner or something like that, just start telling me what you're going to do. And if we run into a mechanics thing, I'm going to tell you what you can roll or what, if you want to say, I want to jump that ledge, I can tell you, hey, your jump distance is on page 2, that sort of thing. Really don't worry too much about the system being a huge barrier as a player, unless your DM kind of expects that from you, right? So the one thing I would say that I follow this up with is that folks need to start familiarizing themselves with their sheets as they go across time as time progresses, because you're going to get more and more abilities, and it's going to really bog things down if you have no idea what your abilities are or anything like that. So that's just one of those things that I ask my players to just take a look at your sheets before the session starts. Some things that could be really useful, like having a health potion, or I didn't even realize I had a health potion or something like that. That can end up slowing things down, especially when you have a lot of players, like 5 or 6 players at a table. So um, be attentive during other players' turns, right? That's a big one. Making sure that people uh, don't think that they can just like get up and go answer a phone call while everyone else is at the table and then expect you to come back and where were we and stuff like that. Now, obviously, we're all reasonable people, so there's certain things that can come up, but that should be the exception, not the rule, right? So I always ask my players as one point that I expect, as I expect people to ask questions. Can I jump that? Can I woo the dragon as a bard, right? And then I'll say, sure, roll this. Sure, roll that. You can try, right? Second question is always, how hard is it going to be? Because you can pretty much try anything. Um, I'm unless someone asks me as a kind of as a player, hey, is that a realistic thing? That's something that I don't expect everyone to memorize, right? Because everyone's conception of a hero is different. Some people have that anime mentality that, oh, it's only 40 feet between buildings. Yeah, I can jump that. Whereas I'm more of the 40 feet for a starting level player. If it's 40 feet down, you're gonna die when you hit the ground, right? So like, just making sure that people understand the context is really important. So I like that people to ask me, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. How can I do it? And then how hard is it gonna be if they're really interested? Otherwise, that's one of those things that can go underneath the radar, and then people can suddenly have really hurt emotions just from not having that perception correct. Next one, would I know? That's a big one. So if I just start describing a troll, um, my players might know what a troll is because they've spent the last 15 years of their lives playing The Witcher and watching Lord of the Rings and all that sort of stuff. But in our setting, knowledge is very sparse, and so their character might not know what a troll is. And so that's one of those items where I always ask people to really engage the difference between themselves and their play and their characters. And I think that's why that's why we have a knowledge skill. We've got multiple knowledge skills to differentiate the difference between your player and your character.
And
I
it's
think
okay to ask it the other way around too. It might be, somebody mentions the name of a god, you as a player, no idea, right? But your character might know because this is the atmosphere that they've grown up in. So it's okay to ask the other way around too, but to phrase it in kind of the way of what would my character know is very helpful. So,
exactly. Sometimes you'll come across things like uh, what's a good example? Um, like you'll have the god Uldrayan is in my setting. Pretty much everyone in the main country will know what Uldrayan references. Um, most of them, most of my players are not going to have any idea, right? And so that's probably not even going to require a knowledge check unless there's someone whose intelligence is below the average peasant, and then I might make them check or ask someone, right? So, very good points. Moving off of that, one thing that I ask my players is uh, is about table talk and metagaming, right? So you can absolutely metagame in my um, the caveat to that is you might say something like, "Hey, um, I'm going to maximize my movement or suggest to my other player, hey, you should go around the way because you could potentially get hit by an attack of opportunity or something like that. That's plenty fine. But what I don't allow is when your character acts on information that there's no way they could have, right? So if you split the party and one side of the party gets in danger, the other party can't just be like, I'm feeling like turning back. Why? It's because that is where I draw the line from metagaming. So you can help each other out all you want, but when it comes to acting in those fashions, that's where I tend to start drawing the line. Now, how thick is that line? I ask that folks play a character that rounds into the major their decisions are rounded into the majority's favor. What do I mean by that? Everyone knows of the statement, it's what my character would do, right? Well, if your character, if it's a 50-50 chance that they would do something and you're thinking, they'll probably lean towards doing the thing that would piss everyone else off at the table, round the other way. Just do what everyone else is going to like because it's not such a character breaking thing, right? The other thing that I ask is that you role play a moderate character, right? So you can play a character that has strong feelings about something, but the fact of the matter is that there are very few zealots in the world. And so if you make your character have three traits and that's their entire personality, and you say that, um, they would they hate cats, right? It's like, okay, does that mean that your character is gonna kill every single cat that comes around in front of them? No, it means that they just hate cats, right? They just more of a dog person, whatever. Um, Make sure that you take that into context into what they do, right? Uh, and then engage with the story, right? So you need to have reasons to engage with the other players, and you need to have reasons to engage with the story. So if your character is like, it's not my favorite thing to do, like, hey, my character's not interested in money. Why would he talk to why would he be interested in this bounty hunter who's trying to sell him, trying a contract? Maybe think about maybe your character is interested in helping the poor, so he could get the money and use the money to give it away to someone else, right? Find reasons why your characters would engage with the plot. Find reasons why your character would help the other party members. That's all I ask. So,
And obviously,
anyways,
in this case, it's just a duet. So there's not any other players that I'm taking into consideration yet, but I do have to consider that my character will end up in a party eventually, and that they can't be uh, too difficult to get along with, I suppose, would be the way to put it. And I have to be very careful to not put myself in a dangerous situation because it'll just be me. I won't have somebody who can pick me up if I go down, right? So I shouldn't just brazenly fight four guys by myself, because nobody's gonna have my back. So it's just something I have to keep into consideration.
so a couple things that are duet specific and specific to this session zero now. We can finally get into the meat and potatoes of this. Uh, Sarah, I would like to make sure that you role play either a empathetic or a curious person. What I mean by that is that if I have plot leads, I need your character to not avoid plot leads, right? And a good portion of that is either being empathetic, meaning that you see something going wrong and you engage in it, or you see something that is confounding or interesting and you choose to engage in it, right? There are other items, but I need you to think about how you're going to engage into story. What interests your character to act and get out of their comfort zone?
Okay. And my character that I was kind of toying around with in my head would probably be lean towards the curious side. So I think
Okay.
that could work pretty well.
Okadoke. And as far as a character, what kind of character do you have a character in mind?
I do. I got excited. I'm one of those people who I kind of have like a backup list of like different characters I want to play, right? I get excited about a concept and I want to try it out. Other people just come into a campaign and they don't know what they really want to do. But I've been brewing on an idea for a while that I do want to do, I guess, something akin to like a druid. Um, where I do eventually want to do something where I'm pretty heavy on the summons side or the um, I would almost lean towards what they're called like a construct, where I have one strong summon that I build and that a lot of my powers divvy into that. That being said, that's just where I want to get eventually. That doesn't need to be where I start, right? Because I'm starting at level 0, so there can be some like learning there as I gain that skill.
And for those of you who I've talked to Sarah about this previously because she's familiar with how I envision familiars in this game, but it sounds to me like you're very interested in using familiars as part of your kit, so to speak. Uh, for those of you that are out there, there's a couple problems that you can run into with familiars if you don't make sure that you distinguish this right out the gates. And one is, as a DM, if there's a dog running around on the battlefield and something hits it with an axe, that dog is dead. Like, so if someone's really expecting to have like a huge coating of plot armor on their familiar, that can be a huge problem if you haven't really thought about the essence of that thing's existence. So what I do in a lot of ways for summoning is that there's a couple different things that people can do. One is that they can use magic and they can actually pull something from the spirit world, and basically they can use magic to make a body and take that spirit and stick it into the body that they made. And so they're really more of a summoner. So if you think about like someone who summons a demon to the plane, well, if the demon dies, it just goes back to wherever it came from, and they can summon it again. This is useful because you can kill these things off, right? And it's not going to be really like herky jerky, right? Another thing with these summons is that um, you don't have to worry about the setting, right? So another way that you can do summons is that you can have someone call to the wild, right? And something answers their call, and so they have some critter come and join them on their shenanigans, right? The problem with this is that if someone's down in the caves and they have an ability to summon a wolf, it's like, okay, you're in the middle of a subterranean fortress of dwarves. Where the heck did this wolf come from, right? So that's one of those items where I've had success in the past where if they do a call, it they don't really have a lot of control over what creature shows up, but there could be something that comes with the territory, so to speak. So there's a couple different ways you can do it, and then one of the other ones is a bit riskier is that you can have like a dire pet, right? Which is something that's like you got a really strong emotional connection with this creature, but they've spent a lot of their kit value into making this thing much more survivable, and they've turned it essentially into another player. And so what you basically have is two half players instead of one big player. And then that allows them to be able to get the role playing that they're interested in it without it hindering combat, or making it so overpowered that the other players start to feel a little bit of animosity towards it. So, anyways, that's just some things on summoning. Right out the gates, we mentioned you're going to get about 5 or 6 level ups through this, and we mentioned kind of some stuff about where you'd like to be with your kit come the time that the other players join us after the origin story. So I think that for the sake of everyone here and for the sake of mystery, maybe we'll keep some of that stuff as a mystery for now and how that works. Um, but you'd mentioned before a couple distinct items about how you wanted your summoning to work that I think that feel free to divulge here because that is actually part of how I created the campaign or how I'm creating the campaign is to work in how your character is getting these abilities as far as a backstory.
Okay. Yeah, and so what I think's really cool about like the first mechanic you mentioned with summoning where they kind of pull essentially a spirit or other, you know, forces into a body. I thought it would be really cool to have somebody who is kind of more geared towards the mechanical side of things where she's actually very involved in like she builds a body out of sticks and twigs and bones and twine or whatever she can find and constructs some sort of like being to fight on her behalf like like I can't even think like builds like a woody like wolf or something akin to that fights on her side of things.
So
um,
for those of you who are playing D&D or something along those lines, this would be your classic tinkerer builds, except it's just skinned with a forest theme. So it's one of those items that's really easy to do for your players. You just gotta be open to changing the skin of what the text says, and that's how you get your mechanics for it. It's really easy.
yeah, and that totally works for me for what I'm kind of looking for. I I don't want to lean very heavy on magic other than that component for my character that's kind of leaning between Tinkerer and Druid. Um, I kind of want her to just be more of like a melee fighter. No, I don't want to do ranged. I'm not really feeling, magic as an element for fighting hand to hand or melee fighting. Sounds like more what I would be interested in. Um, I want her to be able to kind of use some sort of like mechanics, maybe some trapping or something in battle. I haven't like flushed that out yet for what I want, but it sounds like something that might work on the same lines. So,
So as we start to build out your character, which we'll do here in a little bit, one of the things to remember is, as spoke about before, it was that battle pillar compared to the exploration pillar compared to the socialization or social interaction pillar. Now, as a duet, what we have learned historically is that uh, the battle pillar is kind of going to be, for the most part, reserved and shrunk down in comparison to the other two pillars. And the reason for this is uh, specifically the way I run a campaign or I run a world is that I try to go for um, relative realism in the world. And what I mean by that is if the players come across an ogre and they decide they want to fight the ogre, that ogre I use pretty much the same stats for and the same temperament, regardless of how many players are involved. Okay. And what that does is it builds in something that's dependable for the players so that they can understand threat in the future, right? So I if I go and the players are going to try to pick a fight with something, I'm not going to go, oh, you know what? They're going to this is going to be really easy for them. I'm going to just jack the health of these bandits up. And so now that you got bandits that got like 10 times the health of the heroes or something like that, where it's just like, what the heck, right? Just because you wanted it to be engaging for the party. And it's like, nah. They wanted to engage this. They're already having fun, okay? Um, it's your responsibility to not basically give them a false god complex or a false god mentality where no matter what decision they make, doesn't matter because it's always going to work out, right? It just really adds credence and threat and suspense to it if you try to stick to a consistent world. So the problem with that is that in a duet, a group of bandits or highwaymen like Sarah was saying, is way more dangerous for one person than it is for four people, right? Or three people or whatever. Um, a vampire is way more dangerous for one person than it is for three people. If you get someone who's mind controlled or something like that too, it's like game over, like instantly, right? So, what that means is that the player needs to be more worried about avoiding conflict and figuring out how to get their objective completed without engaging conflict, or they need to be so prepared for the conflict that it's almost over before it begins, especially at low levels. So I would just like to make sure that when you're building out your kit, that you're prepared for exploration, survival, and social competency. Um, as you know, you don't just invest all of your
Yeah.
stats into combat, because if you're expecting to fight your way out of situations, it's not going to be common.
Okay. No, that's good to know, and that's kind of that'll that'll work. We'll be able to build something with that. So, um, should I? Do you want to start on the character sheet at this point, or is there any other
The one
baseline?
couple other things that I would mention too is, uh, as we are running a duet, and there is this problem that you can run into with game balance with a player in your world. What we have talked about in the past, and I think this is a good thing to share with the community, is you have to introduce something into the situation to help make the situation more forgivable for the player. Okay. And the way you do this is that you basically have buddies for the player, right? So you can make a party of four and just have a whole bunch of other people, NPCs, that can run with the player. You can give them a big ally, something like that. You can put them in area of the world that's slightly less threatening. There's more wolves to worry about and bandits to worry about than there are dragons. There's things like that that you can do. Um, I will reserve a couple of options for you, but one thing to be cognizant of is, would you like to have allies or anything like that that you run, or would you like to keep that in the DM purview?
I'm fine with that staying on the DM purview. I don't need to control more than my character for this,
Okay,
as long as that's fine with you.
sounds good. So what we can do is that if the character is um, is someone that's going to be a core tenant to moving along, it'll either be plot related or it'll be backstory related, and we can weave that in, just to determine why they're with you, right? So yeah, from there we can go ahead and probably start looking at character creation here. So for those who are uh, hanging out with us right now, one thing that you can do is you can hop open to the cheat sheet that we have also posted. And at the very, very bottom, I actually have a quick reference for character creation. So one thing that we've noticed with character creation, and you'll see this with D&D as well, is they've kind of moved away a little bit from racial bonuses and archetypes and stuff like that, and they've kind of moved towards um, a system that really lets you kind of be whatever the heck you want, right? And so what I did is I edited the Genesis system so that way you could be a big strong orc and use stats that are predetermined for that, or if you wanted to be uh, an orc who is not very strong, not very fast, but really, really smart, maybe good at magic or something like that, you wouldn't have to have like these throw stats. You wouldn't be pigeonholed. So what I did is we just build the characters from like ground up, right? And what we can do for world integrity is, there are some races like ogres where I'm gonna have like a minimum on how strong, a minimum on how strong they can be, right? So it means they're not going to be weaker than a gnome or something like that. But for other ones, you can usually think of something, right? So if someone's like, I want to have a broken leg, and that's why my agility is really low. go
I
for it.
don't think I've ever heard
That's
a player that has
right.
asked for that, but you never know.
Yeah, it's to be honest, it's usually me. I'm the one who wants to play those characters, but I'm a permanent DM, so I just get to make NPCs that have those stats,
Hey,
I guess.
I'm all for playing a character that's got some flaws, obviously.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of fun too. I think it's just as fun to fail as succeed, but that's just
Yeah.
me. Some other people feel very differently. But
So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put some stats onto your sheet. The first thing that you will notice that you start is with all of your attributes are set to 1, okay? For those who are watching, the attribute range is 1 to 5 for the how high it goes. 2 is your average person, and this is an exponential scale. So a 1 is someone who's got a severe handicap in that, right? So if your strength is 1, you're probably a short stack, right? If your agility is 1, you're probably a slow, lumbering person. If your intelligence is 1, yeah, you got dropped as a kid, right? So that's kind of how that works. 2 is average, and then I usually use like athletes in modern day as a good example for what 3, 4, and 5 are. 3 would be your college level athlete. 4 would be your Olympic level athlete, right? So you're talking about less than 1% of the modern world is up there, right? 5 is inhuman, right? So you're talking about demigod strength. You're talking about the strength of an elephant versus the strength of a human. Okay. And then you can use that kind of litmus test as a respective for all of those. Agility 5 means that you're super quick. You're doing backflips over people. You're doing like matrix crap, right? Intelligence level 5, right? You're doing that like Sherlock Holmes thing where you're like, I've already know how this is gonna end before it's even started, and then like the flurries of blows happen, right? So charisma level 5 is just, you walk into a room and people just ask for you to sign away their for them to sign away their wills to you and stuff like that because you're so charming, right? So, anyways, the next thing that you get is a threshold uh, for your brawn is going to be 10, and your strain is going to be 10. And those will get plus your willpower or plus your brawn. Okay. What kind of race are you thinking about playing?
all right, so I took a look at the races that you kind of had, and obviously I'm going for Druid. I'm gonna go a little classic on the race. You call it Wooland. It's very akin to like a wood elf. For anybody who's
Yeah.
doesn't know Josh's world.
So the woolen category of person would include wood elves, but it would also include forest critters, which would be your satyrs, your minotaurs, anything that's like a friend of the forest. That's kind of your woolen category of person.
So I think I know my character's gonna have like horns, you know, um, get the pointy elf ears, even though they're not called an elf, so to speak. But but nothing else too crazy distinctive. Not going for hooves or anything like that. Just a little touch of a woodland, so to speak. But
All right. So one thing that D&D does really well is they just give you like you can just pick a class and then a subclass. There's nothing like that in Genesis. And in a way that frees you to kind of make your character kind of tailor them as you see fit, but what it doesn't do is give people a clear image of what the heck you're supposed to be in a nutshell. But what we do is we try to accomplish some of that through uh, while we build our characters. One thing that you do get is you get right out the gates you'll have 8 career skills. Okay. Now, a career skill is something that is easier for you to level up into, and everyone here skills are your specific things that you're actually going to roll. Very similar to D&D there. Now, with your character having skills, one thing that we look into is if you're going to be a martial class versus uh, like a more of like an exploration class. right? And that'll determine how many of these different areas that you go into. Typically, folks don't get more than two combat skills, for instance. And now what we have in our notes here is just like subject to what the DM thinks. So if you got 8 that you think that you really want to do, go ahead and start marking them. But talk to me as you're thinking about picking some of those.
Okay. First things first. I combat is on the side here. I wanted to potentially wield like a spear. Is that considered melee heavy or melee light? Would it be? I was thinking light, but
A spear is a heavy melee heavy because
okay.
melee heavy is two-handed, whereas melee light is one-handed.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so one thing that I have for a caster is you automatically should pick one of those five magic skills as your casting skill.
Okay. Um, sorry. So I should pick melee heavy for my combat
If you're looking
for
to be
spear.
using the spear. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So there should be four magical skills: witchcraft, arcana, which is like your classic wizard with a book learned in school. You can also use witchcraft arcana as a bard. If you use it as a bard, you'll just use it as presence. If you use it as a classic wizard, you will use intelligence. And that basically just resembles or represents your ability to um, basically like mathematically pull the energy of the world down and craft it into something, right? So like a bard, you kind of need to have melody and stuff like that, and that's kind of how that works. But it's based off of your presence. Sorcery. So this represents someone who is what they call a fragment of the Uber. Basically, um, they are touched by fate, or it would be very similar to um, in D&D. They just say sorcerers just know how to do their magic. It's innate. The way I like to look at it more is animals that have magic or magical mermaids, things like that. Those are your sorcerers in this world, right? So it's something that's just like something that comes out of you, right? So if you're just someone who wants this like innate connection with the world, you would use sorcery, and that's going to be based off of your willpower. If you wanted to have a relationship with a higher entity, that's going to be channeling. So channeling is your ability to, like, it's your paladin who says, "Help me, God," and the god comes down and you blast the undead to bits. That's your willpower, right? Because you're asking the god, commanding the god with every bit of your soul that you can. So it's willpower. Or you can use channeling and use the cunning attribute, and that is your ability to make a deal with the devil, so to speak, right? So you make a pact relationship with an entity, and it's your ability to carefully word what you ask for to get the best deal out of the relationship with that entity, and so you use cunning. And the last one is script magic. Script magic is being able to infuse the world with magic using what is called, but basically it's like rune magic is what it would be considered because you scroll out magical script, which is the language of the gods basically, and you can enchant things, or you can do transmutation magic, which is turning something from like clay to stone or something along those lines. It's kind of transmutation. Now there's a couple special ones here, and that is if you're a sorcerer, meaning that you're a magical pony or something like that, you just have, you're innately magical. You are immune to certain effects, and so some of this stuff is very similar to like if you ever read the Dresden Files or anything like that. There's certain things that keep magic from working very well. Magic is very effective at what it does, but water and earth or earthen materials make magic not work. People who have studied magic instead of are just an innately magical creature have a hard time doing it. So if you are a sorcerer, you are actually immune to the effects of water and earth. But that being said, because all of your magic comes from just kind of how you live, like a fish breathing water, you can't perform rituals. And rituals are where you use a lot of preparatory things to get your magic to work. I would constitute, by the sounds of it, the creatures that you're intending to make. That would probably be a ritual spell, and it would probably be something that where you're trying to learn kind of how to make it work. So I would just keep that in mind for sorcery specifically, is that you can't perform rituals.
Sorcery can't perform rituals. Okay, so it has to
Yep.
kind of be one of the others. Okay.
Yep. So the next one is script. Uh, Script is very unique. It is based off of the intelligence stat, so it's your ability to. Um, it requires intelligence basically to work. I don't have anything else that I can say about that. But you are required to take the Earth Mage talent, right? So Earth really screws with like how people cast. That's why like plate armor, it might ricochet the magic and bounce it back, that sort of thing. If you're like
Cool.
a big old magic, sorry, a heavy knight or something like that. Um, there's certain things that people can do. There's the earth mage talent and there's the water mage talent that let them say, hey, I've practiced around water all the time. I, I'm basically a merfolk, right? So they can take that talent and ignore the effects of water. If you use script magic, you are required to take the earth mage talent, which just basically means that your magic works better with earth stuff. Um,
Okay.
where this would apply is like if someone tried to like teleport through a granite wall, it's not going to work very well, right? Unless they are adept at what the earth stuff and how that works. There's certain casings, like you might have a magical item encased in lead. That's to keep magic from coming in. Someone who is a script mage might be able to, or earth mage in general, like a geomancer, because they've figured out how to make that stuff work. That's those things that kind of helps. So that's how that is.
So for me,
Getting back to you. Yeah.
what you're saying, not sorcery, but I wasn't sure what it would fall under.
It kind of depends on what you want to do with it. So, uh, you could, because you are channeling, trying to contact like the spirit realm, right? That's what the potentia is. It's essentially your dream world mixed in with your spirit world, mixed in with the energy grid of the world. It's all one place. You could say that it's like a will that you're trying to like channel it in that way. Um, you could use script magic, and that could be one of those items where you have to etch out certain things in order to like bring the spirit in or make ready the body, so to speak. That would be intelligence based. Witchcraft Arcana, that's probably the route this is gonna go, in my opinion, because that's the art of trying to take the potentia, which is what this is, and using like the magic version of physics, apply it to the world, right? So you're trying to take a spirit and bring it out and put it in something, which in that
Right.
case you'd use intelligence. So it's really kind of the flavor that you want. If you want to be like a voodoo mud person, and then like make the script by writing with mud on yourself and some other stuff like that, we could go with script. It's flavor at that point, whatever you're interested in.
I'd lean towards just the witchcraft then, I guess. Like, I'd like it to be like she is doing like a um ritual or whatever, like it's not like, yeah. But it doesn't have to be like the script stuff. I'd like you've kind of made that sound more along a little bit closer to the it's not like science, but like she's trying to figure stuff out. She's trying intellect is definitely like the stat that makes sense for it. I don't know that I want her to be like a doing an like going too hard on voodoo train.
Right?
um, not really wanting her to coat herself in mud or anything like that. Just want her to be able to like build and construct uh,
Yeah.
these creatures. So
So I would throw a checkbox as a career onto Witchcraft Arcana, and then you can put in parentheses, just put INT for intelligence, and that's what it's based off of then for your character. Okay, and then we can circle back to this, but for now, so we've got 2 of your 8 career skills um, already picked.
mechanics, because she's obviously very interested in how things work and as well as building things.
Mhm.
So I do want to do that if that works.
Yep. So I think that I got here as an example, a previous mage. All I made them require them, all I required them to do, and they were a full caster, was they got 1 magic skill, 2 knowledge skills, 2 social skills, and 3 general skills.
Okay.
Now, for your character, since you're going to be a hybrid, I did require that 1 magic skill, and
Hmm.
I required the 1 melee skill, so that way you can wield a weapon competently. With the 6 left, I will require at least 1 knowledge skill and 1 social skill, at least.
Okay.
So that's 4 of your 8. I'll allow you to take the other 4, and you can put them in knowledge, social, or general as you see fit.
Okay. And I think survival. I want to be, a woods person. I like the idea of survival. Like, um, let's see. Let me think on social. So there's charm, coercion, cool, deception, leadership, negotiation, and performance. Oh, that's tricky. I definitely don't want to go like coercion or not really feeling deceptive with this character. I don't think it's not much for performance either. Um, let's see. Not sure if I should lean. I'm thinking just doing charm. Like I do like she's going to be kind of a friendly person.
Sure.
um, if that works.
Yep.
Okay. Um, so that's melee heavy, mechanics, charm, witchcraft, survival. So that's 5 out of 8, right?
Yep.
Okay. What would be um how do I put it? Like which one's like detecting things?
So vigilance is your ability to detect things without trying to detect things. Uh, and then investigation is your ability to, and actually, I would require you to have 1 more knowledge skill since the, oh no, you got mechanics, sorry. Investigation is your ability to gather information actively. And then perception is your ability to, the way I describe it is it's your ability to pick things up with your senses willfully,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Um so I do want to do investigation. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess I do have 2 left. Do you have any suggestions for kind of the druid build I'm going for? I'm think
Knowledge nature.
Null nature. Oh, I didn't even see that. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. I just need one more, and I'm not sure if I want to do perception or vigilance. I think I'm gonna go vigilance. That's the
Okie
one more.
doke.
That's the more act. Which one's more
That's the
active?
passive. That's the passive.
Let's do the more
Yep.
active one. Perception makes sense. Like if you to be kind of kid into both perception and investigation, they kind of seem in the same vein, I
Yeah.
guess.
The way I describe the difference between perception and vigilance is a vigilant person is who you want to stand guard at night because they'll hear that branch crack and then whip their head around. They won't accidentally fall asleep. Perception is one of those ones that you want for a scout because they'll be able to see like a hawk. So that's kind of the difference.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I think that
Per-
works for me.
Perfect. All right. The next thing we got here. So when it comes to your XP, let me actually looking at the wrong thing here. Cheat sheet. There we go. Where are you going, DM? So you have uh, one. You gain one rank in each of up to four of those skills right immediately now.
Okay. So I definitely want to gain one in mechanics, one in investigation, one in survival, and then let's do one in melee heavy.
Okay. Then you gain 240 experience.
Oh boy.
Now, here's a couple of things that we need to remember about experience. One, everyone who's listening, this is not how Genesis normally does it. Uh, I have my own little funny thing that we do. Um, that being said, moving aside, you're familiar with the ranks and how that works on everything. You can choose to buy abilities outside of your tier tree as character creation traits, normally known as racial traits. Okay. So, what I mean by this is there are certain traits that require you to buy a whole bunch of other traits in order for you to normally get it, like a tier 5. It might just might be an extra soak. If we're building your character and they're a turtle person and you want an extra soak because of that, you can just buy that. It's the same cost, it's 25 XP, but it does not go in your tree. And the reason why is for balance specifically. Um, so you can buy it, but it doesn't contribute towards, like if you bought a tier 4, it doesn't count as a free rank in a tier 4, and then you can go up to the tier 5. So it's just, we pull it out. So is there anything that you want that's unique about your character that you need to have right when they're made and you can't wait for character progression, right? Like breathes underwater or flies. That's where these kind of like that's where this is really kind of reserved for.
Um, Not really. We've already talked about where I want to get eventually, but um, I don't have anything my character needs to have that's very specific like that.
Okay, so we don't need to worry about racial traits then, and that's a big load off my back. Then the next thing is that obviously this is the only time you can spend XP on your characteristics. I usually encourage folks to uh, spend XP on their characteristics to the max, just because this is the only time that they're ever going to have a chance to do this.
How much XP can I spend? on?
So they all start at 1. You
Yep.
have 240 XP to spend. You can spend all 240 XP on characteristics.
Oh, I did not think that was the case.
Yep, it's the case because you start at everything at ones, not with everything at twos.
Okay.
And that's the yeah, we stripped them down so that way you would have more uh,
Okay.
luxury to change how your character is.
If I bid, so how much does it cost me to put stuff up to a 2?
20. It's intuitive in that sense.
One.
So if you want to go from a 1 to a 2, it's 20. If you want to
So
go from 1 to a 3, you got to get the 20 and then the 30.
if I want to make everything a 2 as a start.
Yep, it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12.
Oops.
That's 120 XP. That's half your XP.
Okay. I would like to start average everything at least.
Some
So
people love to min max their kits. I remember some people were like, "How do I get 2 5s?" Like, you can. As a DM, I punish those ones hard, hard. So if people, want to go that route, I mean, I don't punish them for it. I just don't pull my punches.
so I know I want my intellect to be good. um so how much did I spend so far? I'm so sorry.
You spend 120 XP.
120. So 3 would get me to 150. I'm tempted to bump it up one more time because it's such a focus point of my character. So that would put me at 190 of 240, right?
It's 120 plus 70, so 190. Yep.
Okay. So that leaves me with 50 left. Um, I if I up cunning, so I can only up one more thing basically because I have 50 points and it cost me 30. So I have to choose which of these the rest of the stats I want to up, right?
Yep. And you can decrease one of those twos to a 1 if you would like to, like, get that 4 to a 5 or whatever.
Okay. Um, so cunning is like a, a rogue is cunning. Willpower is like your your mental fortitude, right?
Uh, you sorry, you asked between your cunning and your intelligence?
No, cunning and willpower.
Oh, yep, sorry. Your to just go through them real quick. Brawn is just straight up how strong you are, right? How thick you are. Then your agility is your how in tune you are with your body. So that's why agility increases your ability to see. It's also why you can do backflips and stuff like that. Intellect is kind of like what you know. Cunning is yeah. So it's like your plastic. It's your 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 plastic versus your elastic intelligence. So cunning is your ability. Like you might not know anything, but you could play the conversation and work your way around, right? So someone who's got intelligence and therefore mechanics knows how something works. Someone with cunning can figure out how to make it do something, having no knowledge with it from it before, right? So it's like book smarts versus street smarts, is what some people will say it. So cunning's thinking on your feet. And then willpower, sorry, I remember that you actually asked about willpower. Willpower is how determined you are, right? So that's like the scrappy guy, right? The strong brawn guy will take an arrow to the chest and he'll shrug it off because he's so tough. The the willpower guy will take the arrow to the chest and it'll look pretty bad, but he's just going to keep going because of his strength of his spirit, not the strength of his body. So they can stay up for days on end if they have a really high willpower. They will not run from dragons. They'll stick around. It's their determination and their grit. Um, yeah,
Yep. And then the last one is presence is charisma,
yeah,
basically.
presence is
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Um, Mechanics would be building a trap, but
hmm
what would be like setting a trap, like skullduggery?
Um, so for those who are listening, I normally allow, and for you, I guess, I normally allow a couple, like usually two options for every single thing that people ask if they were going to try to do something, unless it's very obvious. So if you're going to set a trap, you could use survival, or you could use mechanics. Mechanics is I know how to make a trap, I'm going to build a trap. Survival is more like I've been catching animals all my life. I can make one for to catch food, or I know people never watch where they look, never watch where they walk, so I'm gonna put something down low, sort of thing. It just
Okay.
kind of depends on the flavor of your character. I would allow either.
I think I'm gonna go with cunning as my last thing, and then that leaves me, I believe, with 20 XP outside of my
Gotcha.
core stats here, if that works.
Yep. Okay. So you just finished spending all your XP, is that correct?
I have 20 left.
20 left. Okay. So you may spend those on talents or on skills to put extra ranks and skills.
Can I put
Um,
anything into witchcraft at this point or no? Just I don't know where we're gonna start my story.
so here's my thought. As we had discussed, your character has not practiced this skill as part of your background for now,
Okay.
because this is the story of how you gain those abilities.
Okay.
So I'm going to say no, but I'm not going to make you wait too long.
That's fine. That makes sense to me.
If you would like to bank the XP, I'll allow you to spend it during the next level up
That
to quickly level up.
I
Um,
think I'm okay. I think I have an idea of how I'd like to spend them. So the first rank is 5 XP if it's a career skill, and and
and
then
five more. It's always five more for non-career skills.
so survival second rank is 10, right?
Yep. And there are talents that allow you to gain extra career skills if that's something that you're like, man, I really needed another one, sort of thing.
No, I think I'm gonna get one in charm, one in perception, and then the second rank in survival for my last 20 XP.
Cool.
And then that I'm just gonna try to be a little spread out to start.
Alrighty.
So I've
So
spent 240.
the next item is that your strain threshold and your wound threshold go up. So you add your brawn to your wound threshold, and that is your base.
So my brawn is 2. So I add 2.
Yep, so I would write your base is 12
Oh, okay.
because you could have other things that improve that. And then your strain is your 10 plus your willpower.
My willpower is 2.
Yep. So if someone wanted to play like a little squirrel person, we could give them negative racial traits, and that would be like half their person's health if they wanted to do something like that, and then they would have extra XP to spend during this. That's how we play that. All right.
Okay.
So you got that all figured out. Um, the next thing that we can do your heroic feat, but one thing that's easier to do than your heroic feat here is that we can do your languages.
Ah,
So, your language options. So, just for everyone who's listening in, what we do is there's like components to language. So we've only got 6 languages, but it's under the idea that like most languages are based off of Latin, right? So if you knew Latin and something else, you could probably piece together what someone's saying. So the 6 languages are common, primitive, primordial, celestial, abyssal, and infernal. So you get an amount of them equal to your intelligence. So actually, what 2 do you not want? Because you get all of the other ones. Pays to be smart.
Okay, 1 second. I obviously want to know common, primitive, primitive, like that. Sure, close enough. Um, what, what were the other
Uh,
four?
then we have primordial, which is like talk to elementals, talk to trees, talk to things that make up the world. Whereas primitive is like a little crazy goblin guy who's in the middle of the forest, right? They probably have their own language. It's just so guttural that it's not part of the common
Yeah,
improved
it's
world.
not the
Yep.
primary language. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I definitely want primordial, so that's three.
The last 3, we have celestial, abyssal, and infernal. So abyssal would be profane, which I should probably just swap that out now. I have it in front of me. Uh, it's how the Cthulhu monsters of the world leaking into this world speak. Infernal is demon related stuff, and celestial is angelic related stuff.
I think I want to do the profane because I feel like knowing that like I might be messing with some spirit magic. I feel like profane uh, kind of ties okay to that, Just
Yeah.
know some odd things, basically.
Boom. All right. So the way that this works is usually if you have like something like dwarfish language would be common plus uh, primordial, right? Because they do earth stuff and whatnot, and so their language is based off of being stuck underground for long periods of time, plus being someone that talks to normal people in cities and stuff like that. So that's kind of how like the how the language develops, so to speak. All right. So if you have if the language is comprised of 2 different things and you have both of those things, you speak fluent in it. If you lack one of them, you understand it like broken English. That's how that works.
Okay, that makes sense.
Certain things I reserve the right for either being above and beyond or for being like having 3 different components based off of how alien the race is and stuff like that. All right, the next thing that we have is um, we got your heroic feat, and then we'll have some money to spend at the store, and then you're good to go.
I have
Actually, you're not.
no idea what I want to do for my heroic feat if it's not related to my like magic that we're getting into. Um,
We can make it part of your heroic feat. You just won't have access to your heroic feat for the first session or 2.
okay. I mean, I'm okay with that. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know. So, do you have any ideas to get me rolling?
Mm, not right off the top of my head. So why don't we look at your strengths, flaws, fears, and desires, and then come back.
Okay. So, I have some things I know about how I want my character to be, um, but not totally fleshed out yet. So I know I want her to be, I'm gonna say like thrifty or not, or she doesn't want to be like wasteful, right? So I think that'd be kind of fun to build into the thing in a few different ways, like, oh, don't throw that away, or I could use that, that type of thing. Just very cognizant of trying to use every piece of everything, right? Which is kind of ties to like that she wants to like be building things and moving things along. Like I said, I do want her to be curious. Um, so I don't know, maybe if so that's like curious, resourceful. Um,
So what I would say is for your um, for your efficiencies trait or whatever that you're talking about, do you want it to be seen as a flaw or do you want it to be seen as a strength? Because you could see it as like a hoarder and then it's a flaw, right?
right, yeah, like
Or you could see it as uh, you know, possessive, right? Someone who can't like that's mine, like give it back, that sort of stuff, right?
yeah, I was like leaning more towards the hoarder side anyway, because I thought it'd be kind of like a funny, you know, what do you call it, like thing the character does, right? Like it's kind of a silly thing, but so that could be a flaw. I'm just trying to like,
And here's the next thing that since we've been doing this for a little bit and you're familiar with some of these, I know that some of them, especially strength and flaw, one of the ones that comes up is that some people will have their strength be just the synonym to their flaw. It's just like the euphemism, right?
mhm.
Uh, if you would like, you can, as long as you give me four, you can put as many as you want in any of the four categories. So you can have multiple flaws instead of a flaw and a strength, or you can have multiple fears,
Okay.
right? As long as you're not like, my strength is that I'm efficient with the materials I have. My flaw is that I'm a hoarder. My fear is leaving stuff behind. And
Right,
my
right,
desire is to
right.
collect crap, right?
Yep. Uh, so if I say it like she's curious, like I think I kind of want that to be her desire or her drive almost. Um, just trying to think of the best way to like word it, right? Like,
Hmm.
um, because I kind of envision her as starting out almost like kind of sheltered, right? But like then always curious about how things work, like, and
Hmm.
chasing that. So I like if I write to find how things work, right? Like that. It's like a long one. I don't know if there's a shorter word for that for a desire.
Um, sorry, I'm in the wrong one. To find out how things work. So I would get more specific here. And are you interested in wondering how a city functions? Are you interested in how biology works? Are you interested in how, certain things are made? That might help you narrow down what the desire actually is, rather than just everything, how everything do, right?
Hmm. Well, let's see. So she's kind of doing, how do I put it? Like, she's kind of, I wouldn't say playing with like, not like life and death, but obviously she's playing with the spiritual realm a little bit there, right? Like, if she's pulling spirits into being, like, into creatures for her own purposes or whatever, like, um, I don't want it to be like she's doing it for her own thing, right? But you know what I mean? Like I do want her to be like, um, more polite about it, but almost curious how those different spirits work. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and what that line is. Not too.
So you could put understand the potentia. The other thing
Or
that I remembered that you mentioned was that you were interested in your character coming off as a little bit like the alien fae-esque feel
I
to how
didn't.
they.
I want her to
You,
not feel too much like that.
okay, I wasn't sure with just how you mentioned like in passing the other day about like your reference to things dying and stuff like that. So I wasn't sure if you were interested in another sort of like
I don't.
item related to that. So
Yeah,
I just wanted to mention it just as a memory jogger.
I want her to have a blurred line of life and death if she's playing in the spirit realm. I don't know how to work that in here, you know? Like she might not see death the same that everybody else would. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That's tough. Maybe could her strength be that she's polite?
Yeah, yeah, you can make that work,
Okay, I'm making her very Minnesotan.
right?
No fear of her sounding like a fae. She just sounds like a nice Minnesotan gal.
What I would do is I would hyphen that with unassuming because that underlines something that is tactically useful
Okay.
as far as making it a strength, right? Or because like if you're polite,
Hmm.
that's great, but it can also be seen as a flaw, right? And just like that unassuming part is like, oh, like they're not a threat,
Okay.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so it's open. You don't need to take it. You can take it or leave it.
I and I don't want her to just be trying to figure out. Like I do want her to just be curious. I don't want it to just be
Yeah.
as specific as the potential spirits. Like I just want her to have a curious nature.
You do not need every facet of your personality to be in the strengths, flaws, fears, and desires, though, either.
Okay.
So this is because remember, this is meant to give you something that's useful for wondering where your character is going to go or how they would respond to a situation. This isn't like
Oops.
this isn't supposed to be applicable to every situation necessarily, you know.
Okay.
Like your desire could be to be king of the world, right? That's not going to tell you would you like to eat an apple or an orange,
Hmm.
right? But curious is one of those ones that gets like I've never had an apple before, but I have had the I picked the orange last time. Like it'll make you go into the weeds, and I think that's ultimately going to be more distracting than it is helpful.
Okay. Um, she's like, how do I put it? Like for fear, I'm thinking something along the lines of like she's afraid of like she's not afraid of death, right? Like, but she's afraid of one level even deeper than that, where like forever lost. Not like and not just herself, like people she cares about, right? Because she has a community, like she likes people. She's not going to be like a recluse, right? Um, she does like the people that she's with, you know, but she doesn't fully understand death. she's afraid of like the loss, if that makes sense.
Um, trying to think how to play on that. So she's afraid of losing people, like no longer having them around her. So like death would be the same as someone moving, right? Like
Yeah.
moving to the other side of the world. It's the same thing. So it would be uh, like emotional loss, right?
Yeah.
Dealing with something leaving you that is significant. It's not like loss isn't like, oh man, I had to spend some money. You know, like you get like deep into that. It's like
Yeah.
more of an emotional loss.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to just be people, right? Like, oh,
Yeah,
like almost like a like nostalgic type of a thing, right? Like,
right.
oh, what if I never see this place again? Like that type of
Hmm.
um
Memory,
yeah.
your leg,
Yeah. Yeah.
things that you rely on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think in order to figure out your heroic feat, one thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to just briefly detail how magic works because I think that we might even be able to just replace you even getting into magic with your heroic feat too, because you mentioned not wanting to get too into it, right? So a character can use magic only if they got a rank in a chosen magical skill. You can spend XP increasing the ranks further. A character with one or more ranks in a magical skill gains access to all of the spells. In their spell book, you start off with 5 spells. You'd mentioned before that you're not interested in having like a bunch of spells and stuff like that. Is that correct? Right?
Yeah, I don't want to go heavy into spells. Like I really do want it to be focused on my summon. That doesn't mean that I can't have support things for my summon or construct, whatever you want to call them, you know, like that
Okay.
my 5 spells can't be centered around that. Um, if that makes sense. you know.
Okay. So your spell book can be increased further with talents purchases. Spells must fit narratively with the background of why you can cast magic. For instance, a druid can cast a barrier spell, but they probably will be approved of only Wall of Thorns and not Wall of Fire, right? Um, your character must choose spells equal to twice their ranks in their skill after each long rest to equip. So you get a certain amount of spells each day. You gotta just get them ready. Okay, so when we're talking about your class and your how you're gonna choose to spend XP,
Hmm.
because you chose to be a caster, it gets a little bit more complicated. So you mentioned that you don't want to go heavy into magic, but immediately out of the gates, since you chose to be a spellcaster, you get 5 spells.
Okay.
Okay. You also gain a cantrip class. And a cantrip class basically just means if you want to cast a spell out of combat that's like super easy story based and not going to be harder than an average check,
Okay.
you can do that as long as it fits a certain feel to your character, right? So if you're a pyro mage, right? If you're a fire mage, and someone's like, "Hey, I want to like snap my fingers and make a little bit of a light on the tip of my finger to light this fire," it's one of those things that's to keep me as a DM to be like, "Well, is it in your spell book?" Right?
Right. Yeah.
So you can do like little cantrips, little things, but you need to give me your purview. It's not like you can do anything known to man as long as it's small. It's got to fit your niche. Okay.
Okay.
So if you want to go down this route and be a full caster, meaning you have 5 spells and you have a cantrip class, we can go that route. Then you'll need to spend XP in order to get the talent that is uh, ritual casting if you wanted to do bigger cantrips, right? Using your long rest to assemble something, and then poof, voila, you got your robot deer or whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't think that you're going to be invested into magic so much that you can utilize 5 spell slots, granted, then that's when we should look at maybe making you have a talent that lets you do 1 spell a day or something like that, or
Um,
we can look into your heroic feat.
no, I do think I'll be able to utilize that.
Okay.
Um, to enough of an extent to spend the XP down that avenue. Um, and I have an idea for heroic feat. I was thinking earlier, you kind of sparked an idea in my head because you were saying like um, this, like it kind of sucks when the summons dies, right? Um, and I was wondering if my heroic feat could be something about like when a summon's health hits zero, like if I have story points to spend, like I could keep them for a bit longer,
Oh yeah.
whether it was to like fix them, give them some extra like health, or if it was something where like they want to stay a little bit longer, like it's more of a will thing, like no, they're gonna hold out for a bit, um, since it's kind of like about like building these, right? Like they're constructs. Like I physically put the body together and then kind of like use magic to make it do, right? But
Right.
like I'm almost thinking of it. It could be like a repair or something akin to that to keep them with me.
Okay. I like the idea of this heroic feat. Um, one thing that we should keep in mind. So I think that you're going to want to attempt to do a ritual cast for making your dude, right? Um,
Yeah, it'll take time. That makes sense.
but I guess this is one of those things that I need to mention as far as your 5 spells. So your spell limit for 2 things, and I always make sure that if there's something that you want to do that is not a cantrip, you can have it be one of these 5 spells. Most people think of this as your combat magic, but if you want something that's harder than average and you don't want to get ritual casting, then you can make a non-combat spell dedicated toward. So one of your 5 spells is dedicated towards a non-combat scenario, right? So like creation of your thing. The only reason I bring this up is because ritual casting is tier 4, which means it's going to be a long time for you to get there, and you're probably going to want to start using the stuff quicker, right? So when it comes to your spells, you could think of I could think of probably a couple different ways that you could do your familiars with your class. One of them being an out of combat, it takes 10 minutes to do thing, and it's a spell in your spell book. That does not require you to have uh, ritual caster. Ritual caster's improvisational stuff. That's what the talent's there for. Um, then for in the middle of combat, you could do like familiars with 5 HP and less, like birds and stuff like that. Something that's like quick and
Yeah.
something small. You could use your heroic talent, so your heroic feat, to extend the life of any of these little ones, right? So an in combat spell, and then you use your heroic feat to keep it going, or you do something out of combat, you devote a spell to making something cool, and it takes prep, and then you use this to keep it going in the middle of combat or whatever too.
Okay.
So I do like the sound of it. I just wanted to go over some of the magic stuff because the things are gonna start to like Chinese finger trap together pretty quick here. So
Yeah, I'm a little confused by your description. Can I have all three of those things by having multiple different spells in my spell book and keep my heroic feat what I described? Or are you saying I can't?
yes, you can.
can. Okay, I was like, wait.
Yeah, you can have the extend or heal of the familiar as your heroic feat.
Can I have it be like when my constructs like can I have it be like an incidental?
Yep, it can be an incidental.
Like
If
when
it's an incidental, it'll decrease the strength. Like, I guess the way I always look at it is if it's an action, it's going to be more powerful. If it's a maneuver, it's going to be less powerful. If you have an incidental, it's going to be even less powerful. And if it's an out of turn incidental, then it's going to be even less powerful just because of to make sure that it's balanced. So you can have it be an incidental or an out of turn incidental for sure. If something, because I mean, for especially for healing, like emergency, like make sure it doesn't break. That's almost absolutely necessary. It's not going to be useless. I'm just saying that that's where like that's some of your heroic abilities power is going to go into being able to do it quickly and easily.
yeah, my thought was like my constructs when my construct hits 0 health, I get to keep it for a little bit longer or it gets healed just a little bit or like however you want to do it, but I like so we're like reactive versus
Sure.
like
Yeah.
maybe I have a actual spell I could cast that might be able to heal my constructs at some point, but
Yeah.
um
Um, what you could do is I like the idea of being able to keep it around for a bit longer, like an extra 2 rounds or something like that, or an extra round. What I would say is because we want it to be fun,
mhm.
we want to incorporate a roll. Why don't we think about incorporating an intelligence roll? And what it can be is if you do an intelligence roll, um, it would be too powerful if it got to just stick around for turns as long as your successes, because you could roll 6 successes on a simple check, uh, which would be like longer than the entire combat, right? So maybe we set it as a difficulty, like do a hard check, like a hard intelligence check, or a hard witchcraft check, and the theme on it would be like you made it so well before that it just taking long for it to dissipate, so to speak. So it's not like you're actually doing anything in the moment. It's more like the heroic feat is like introducing the fact that it was built better than it usually is, right? And
Yeah,
so it's taking long to dissipate or something like that would be
yeah.
plenty
I've got
fun.
like a few extra little trinkets in there, like oh, that's actually bone under the under
Right.
the sticks.
Um, I would. How about this? You could make it an average check.
I didn't even have to beg for it.
And I'm trying to think here. So when it would be destroyed, you can perform an average check and it stays. Oh, actually, I got a better way of putting it. When it would be destroyed, you may use this ability to do a simple witchcraft check. And the construct gains temporary health
Okay.
equal to the success and the advantage.
Success
Because
and
then
advantage, you said?
success and advantage. Yep. Because then if it gets hit 2 more times or something like that, or gets hit 1 more time by something big, it'll just get squashed still. It's not like it's because otherwise the question is like, is it immune to damage for the next 2 rounds? Is it that
Yeah.
sort of thing? This just makes it like good luck. You could whiff the roll and it's got 1 HP left. You could, but it also makes it feel really really cool. I think that'd be a solid base.
I like that. I like that a lot. Cool.
Cool. Uh, until the end of the encounter, it gains that many temporary hit points until the end of the encounter.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Then you gotta think of some cool name for it.
Yeah, later.
I'll leave
I'll
that to you.
later. I'll
Yep.
use my big brain stuff. Think of something eventually. Okay. Um, is there anything else that needs to be done to get my character up and rolling?
So we just have money to spend, and then we're done. So
Okay.
we do have an equipment list.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, what did I name it? Gear. It's just gear. That's what it is. Here we go.
Oh, it's just called something so weird. Okay. All right. So how much gold do I have to spend?
You have 500 silver to spend.
500 silver. Oh, this got weird. All right. Um, I don't have it pulled up on my screen, but for the stream, but I am just looking at stuff on the side here.
Okay. So we mentioned a spear.
Spear.
That's a easy one to go with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that is still huge.
$110.
All right,
20% of the way there.
110, 390 left. Skill, melee heavy. Range, engaged. Damage, 3.
+3.
Crit, 3.
Uh, yep, 3.
Accurate, 1. Hard points, what's
Hard points is 1 as well.
rarity? Is it 2?
Yep.
Value 110. It's not broken. And it weighs 3. My encumbrance is brawn +5. So my encumbrance is only 7.
Yep, but you can get it back.
That sounds like a good idea. All right, how much does a backpack cost?
You can get a backpack for, let me take a look here. Backpack's $50.
All right. And that gives me +3.
I believe it gives you +4. Yep, +4 to your encumbrance
+4, so
threshold.
it's 11. Okay. Cool. And that was 50. Then let's see. I definitely need an armor of some sort. So I was thinking leather armor.
Mm-hmm.
Leather armor is 50 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's bring me down to 290. All right. And what does leather armor do for me? I get soak.
+1 soak. And put encumbrance is just 1.
Okay. And so I've got 290 silver left still. Big spender.
Oh boy.
Gear and tools. Let's see. I definitely want to make sure I've got some trail rations. They're worth
You're gonna need a magical implement.
magical implement. Ah, okay. Care to explain?
So a magical implement, and if you go to the magic page or the magic book, you can go to spells use with or without implements. Casting with an implement gives you tons of buffs. Casting without one doesn't increase the difficulty of your spells. Um, you just need to have an arm and a outspoken component. So you have to gesticulate and speak loudly. You don't need one, but they give you bunches of buffs.
Okay.
So I just wanted to mention it before you forgot that you're a caster, and lots of casters benefit from that stuff. Given the nature
Touche.
of your spell stuff, I wouldn't imagine that you'd have one immediately.
Probably wouldn't have one immediately, because I it's not something that my character
Yeah,
is doing yet, right? Because this is how she
right.
gets there. Um, but I will keep that in mind right now
Yep.
that I might need one and to save some money. How's that sound?
I don't think you need to. I think we can come across it organically in the campaign. That'll
Okay.
that'll work itself out, I think.
Okay. I'm gonna grab 10 rations, which would be 20 silver. I'm gonna grab 5 torches. Which, what are torches? One each or something? Oh, wait. Torches, they're packs of 3. So I'll get 6 torches for 2.
You're gonna want a water skin for 5,
Okay.
flint and steel for 10.
Um, water, skin, you said that's 5.
Mm-hmm.
Flint and steel, for how much?
Flint and steel for 10.
10. So that's 15 more to subtract from my total here.
Then there's to think about herbs of healing, um, health potions, that sort of stuff. Also, if you want to do trap things, you might want like stuff for that. Otherwise, you can do survival to try to gather some of that stuff. But some of the basics like rope might be something that you would be interested in, or tools like shovels or chisels or axes, like a small hatchet or something like that. Might
Okay.
be useful.
I'm gonna get 5 ropes.
5 ropes.
Yeah. How big
All
are they?
right,
How,
30 feet.
oh,
Each one's a bundle of rope.
okay. I'll get 1 rope. That's fine.
I was like,
Uh,
that's like so much encumbrance.
it doesn't say that on the how much it is on the thing. So
Oh, really? I could
it
have
does
sworn it did.
not. No.
Interesting.
Sorry, that should be 148. Um, yeah, like what kind of do they have tools in here for trap building or
So I guess that's definitely something we can just easily make.
like they have thieves tools? Like if like could there just be trapper tools?
Yeah, we can even just swap out. So where is thieves'
Thieves
tools?
tools are 75. They're in the gears and tools.
I just I'm blind. Thieves' tools 75. Tools for skullduggery. Okay, yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, I would just same thing. Tools for uh,
Trap making
yeah.
or build like I don't know.
Maybe do.
There's a toolkit, but it's 350.
There is.
Yeah, I don't know why it's so much more expensive. I don't have like the money for that.
Okay. Let's do Survivor's Toolkit. So that would be like a hatchet and uh, flint and steel, and like all that sort of like general outdoorsy stuff.
Yeah, like a knife,
A knife. Yep.
etc. Yeah, okay. How much would that be?
I would probably put that at like 100,
That seems fair.
100 or 150. And then what I would allow you to do is that will include your water skin and your flint and steel.
Okay. Water skin as well. Okay. And then how much are potions? How much is a basic health potion?
25 silver.
25. Okay. Health potion. All right, I'm gonna get myself 4 health potions and leave myself silver.
All right. All
um,
right.
I think that's a fine place to start. That's all right.
Alrighty. If that's how you want to do that, then let's go for it.
Ready to survive, okay?
Yeah.
Ready to survive. Unless do I need in order to make my traps, do I need to have components things to do so?
Yeah, you would probably
Resources.
want, yeah, especially if you don't have any particular skill or blueprint or anything. That's all things that are gonna fall into there. So I would definitely look at on the cheat sheet. There's going to be crafting.
There's a section on that?
Yep. Um, Crafting. It's right below magic special threat. I don't know why things got moved around the way they did, but okay. So to make things, to make anything permanent, you need a station and enough supplies. You're not going to make anything permanent though. Uh, there is something on the fly crafting. It's mechanics or survival check. It's the same as above, but item is made instantly and is limited number of uses. Supplies can be foraged for, but the difficulty is the rarity divided by 2. Okay, so there's stuff in there that we can use for that. But what you're going to want is crafting supplies, and their costs are, you're probably going to want crafting supplies that are rarity, just say like rarity 3 to 5, somewhere in there. And that's their cost in silver is their, so if it's a rarity 3, it's 3 silver sort of thing.
Rarity 3 is 3 silver each.
Yep.
What you're saying? Okay. So if I get 10, that is 30. Okay. And I leave myself with 33 silver.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. And then that's where we'll pick up for session 1 of our duet campaign. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys at the next homebrew.